Having different opinions is so 20th century. This century, we have different facts.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Auntie Speaks here. Woohoo! Throw down. We're going to look at Douglas Murray wiping the floor in a debate with the mainstream media. Doesn't matter who he's debating. He's going to wipe the floor with them. Let's hear from Douglas Murray.
It may be, as in my case, for instance, that an entire country got maligned by the mainstream media. It's very interesting, this result. It was a 48-52. That's exactly the result that the British people had in the Brexit vote. You know what? When we voted to leave the European Union, we did so against all of the imprecations of the New York Times, Michelle's employer. We just didn't listen to them. And the New York Times never forgave us. Ever since 2016, there has not been one story in the New York Times that's positive about Britain. We have had, and I'll run through some of them, we had a culinary review that said that the British people still survive on mutton and oatmeal. We had an anti-Brexit piece from the north of England, from Lancashire, a piece of reporting, where the author ended up having to admit that every single one of his facts was wrong, but his perception was correct. We had, recently the New York Times drafted in somebody from Russia Today, Vladimir Putin's propaganda channel, as an employee of the New York Times, to attack Brexit Britain. And when Her Majesty the Queen died, not 10 days of mourning was observed at the New York Times, 3 hours before they started attacking the Queen. And they did so day after day after day, because they hate Brexit Britain. That is just an agenda, ladies and gentlemen. That's not anything else.
I completely agree with Douglas. Brexit was the first balloon that burst for the mainstream media. The mainstream media had a control over the public because they had a control over all the information. They told people what to think. And then Brexit happened. And that was the first time that they realized that their power was in danger. I hate the mainstream media. Full disclosure, I've always hated them. They seem like a bunch of vultures to me. But this was the first time where they went, uh-oh, we don't have control anymore.
Now Canada has become really interesting. It became interesting in January and February of this year. Why? Because you had protesters in Ottawa. Really interesting. When people come out in large numbers, and you know what the job of reporters is? The job of reporters is to go out and say, why are you on the streets? What brought you here? Why are you here with your kids? Why have you got a bouncy castle in the middle of Ottawa? That's a bit strange. Ask them questions. Just find out the story. But you know what? The government didn't want that in Canada. Your Prime Minister decided in advance that these people were, what did he do? All the modern excommunications. They were Nazis, they were white supremacists, they were anti-Semites, they were probably homophobes, they were misogynists, they were probably transphobes, etc., etc., etc. He did all the things you do in the modern political age if you want to just defenestrate somebody who's awkward to you. And then he brings in the Emergency Powers Act. Now, at such a time, what would the mainstream media do? It would question it. It would question it. The Canadian mainstream media did not.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point, isn't it? He's about to tell you why. Now,
the Canadian mainstream media acted as an amen chorus of the Canadian government. I will give you a couple of examples, but ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for hours with examples of this. You had a CBC host describing the Freedom Convoy as a, quote, feral mob. CBC said that 2 Indigenous women were so scared to go outside in Ottawa because of racist violence, didn't bother to mention that Indigenous drummers had led the truckers in an O Canada rendition. The National Observer said that the many black and Indigenous Freedom Convoy supporters were in fact duped by the truckers. The Globe and Mail reporter said, my 13-year-old son told me to tell protesters I'm not a Jew out of fear of anti-Semitic violence, without mentioning that one of the leaders of the convoy was himself Jewish. Now, why is this so rancid? Utterly, utterly rancid and corrupt. Because in this country, your media, your mainstream media, is funded by the government. A totally corrupted system. In 2018, election year, coincidence, the Canadian media has given $595 million over 5 years. They can tell the banks to shut down people's bank accounts. Oh yeah. Your government can do that, and if you're happy with that, just think about what would happen if the shoe was on the other foot. The government can do that, but in Canada, they can also tell the media what to do, and the media does the bidding of the Canadian government. That isn't a free society's media, but this, in a developed liberal democracy like Canada, is a disgrace. We're not saying don't read the mainstream media. We're just saying don't trust them.
Imagine that. Just imagine that the U.S. government paid mainstream media. Now, we basically have the same thing here in America. The mainstream media is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic Party. And if you don't know that, I'm not quite sure what I can tell you to convince you. If the Trump era did not convince you that they were a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic National Committee, I mean, oh my goodness, we had leaks where the announcers for the debate moderators coordinated with the Hillary campaign on what questions she was going to be asked. Okay, now we're going to look at the opposition, the lovely opposition who says the mainstream media is just fine.
The mainstream media is filled with people who don't think like they do, and that fact makes them uncomfortable. And in support of this, they have given us a long list of rather predictable hot-button topics taken from their Twitter feed. And my question was, what would make them happy? So what would restore the trust of Matt and Doug in the mainstream media? And I think with Matt, the answer is obvious. He would like, if the world resembled 1955 again, that would fill him with joy. Doug would like more stories on the Hunter Biden laptop.
4 times you're going to play the race
card? But more
card?
seriously,
I mean, really?
I think that they would be happier if they felt that the composition of prestigious journalistic institutions more closely reflected the full range of ideological attitudes in the American public. That is actually a serious proposition. I don't mean to make light of it at all. But it is one that makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yes, I believe it would make you uncomfortable. But you want to win us back? Yes, represent both sides. That's not a lot to ask. I know it would make you uncomfortable, especially since during a debate, you threw the racist card. You call him racist. I mean, seriously, the entire debate was him calling Matt Taibbi racist and then mispronouncing his name. So yes, you want us to trust you? Show both sides.
I believe that in a liberal society that we have to believe that the people who compose our professions can place their professional obligations above their personal ideological positions. And if you had to make a good faith effort to talk to all sides of an issue, and if you did not do that, told I was this close to being fired. That's how seriously the paper took the commitment to accuracy in its pages. Now, Matt would have you believe that those two principles are no longer a part of the brief of the mainstream media. I would like to say to him, that's completely false, that content. I don't think the issue here is content. The issue here is process, right? The issue here is that mainstream media has a set of professional norms in place because trust is not about content. Trust is about process. And there is one institution here that, it strikes me, has a commitment to the right kind of process, and a whole set of other institutions that most assuredly do not.
Okay, this guy is completely and utterly full of himself, but hey, why not, right? So Malcolm here, he wants you to believe in your institutions. He wants you to believe in them, like the church or God. Yeah, no, trust but verify, I believe, was a famous Ronald Reagan phrase, if I remember correctly. Yeah, no. So this gentleman's basic argument is we have processes in place. And you know, once 30 years ago, I got in trouble because I misnamed a bus. Yes, for about, it seemed like 15 minutes. He talked about one article he wrote that he got wrong, and he named a bus route wrong. And so that was burned into him that he needs to always verify the facts. And he went into great detail about, when I have a story about someone and it's talking about someone else, I have to go verify those facts and get a comment from them. Okay, dude. Believing in the mainstream media, yeah, that's not possible anymore. Not if you're an American and not if you're on the right. I'm so sorry. Not after Trump. Trump destroyed you guys. You made a lot of money off of them because you basically just said, orange man bad, orange man bad, orange man bad, Hitler, Hitler, fascism, fascism, white supremacist. And you did that for about 5 years, almost 6 years if you talk about the entire run-up to his election. I mean, seriously, you're doing it now and the guy is not even in office anymore. So you think that your debate strategy is trust the media. We have the process in place to try to get the real facts out there. And it's not about content. No, it's not about content. So if we ignore all the stories out there about Biden and Biden's family, so half of the country never hears about them? Yeah? You think? Okay.
Institutional constraints as well as, kind of a certain professional pride in being able to distinguish between what you hope is true and what you actually find. The argument that I want to make is that it is only the mainstream media that sort of has that ethos. If you read conservative media, you will not often find, occasionally you will, but I think in general, you will not often find a lot of stuff that conservatives don't want to hear. I mean,
oh, lady, only if you are a liberal, leftist, can you believe that. That is the difference between the right and the left. If you are on the right and you live in the United States, there is no way that you can go through life without knowing the arguments of everything on the left-hand side. Why? Well, because we go to public schools. Where do we get that? What are they teaching in schools? Then we go to university. You think we're getting the conservatives' perspectives there? Oh, and then we watch the news. And then we watch Disney. Oh, we get a lot of conservative views from Disney nowadays. The movies, every place we go. And even more than that, half of what conservatives consume is laughing our butts off looking at you. Half of conservative media is what I am doing right now. It is showing you what the liberals and the lefties are saying and going, can you believe that they believe this? Can you believe that? Can you believe they said that? Do they not know anything? Are they completely ignorant? Half of conservative media is critiquing what you guys are saying. Boy, do you have to be in a bubble to actually believe this. Now we're going to have fun. Now Douglas comes back. Smack him down, Douglas. Go for it.
I'm going to try to take this more seriously than you did in your endless creation of straw men, which just is ceaseless this evening, and address what I think is the real problem we have in our century in terms of information technology. Having different opinions is so 20th century. This century, we have different facts, and it's lethal. It's absolutely lethal for the functioning of society. And if you want to see how lethal it is, look at the situation in America, where not just the media, but every institution, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Supreme Court, every institution, you decide whether it's for your side or not.
How true is that? We have a different set of facts. How many times have you sat in front of a leftist where they are saying that Donald Trump colluded with Russia after everything that's come out? And they really believe that. They really believe that Trump stole the election with the help of Putin. We have different facts, which is scary Because how do you come together as a country if you can't agree on facts? And the second part is just as profound. We can't trust our institutions anymore. We now know that FBI is going after parents. The FBI colluded to spy on Trump when the mainstream media laughed at him for saying that.
It's disastrous for society, but it starts with the facts. And when the facts go wrong, or you become glib about them, or decide that it's just the facts that will suit your side, or pretend you're playing a game of honesty and are not actually playing a game of honesty, everything else in the society can go to hell. This side has not been saying any of these straw men that you've been so kindly creating this evening, Malcolm. We've been saying that the mainstream media cannot be trusted. But the mainstream media is currently failing. It is failing you, the public. It is failing its employees. It's failing at its central task. You quoted one example of what journalism was meant to consist of. I would quote another, what George Orwell said. It's out on his statue outside the BBC. Sadly, the employees do not read it every morning before going in. But George Orwell famously said that the job of a journalist was to tell people facts they don't want to hear. The problem we have in our century coming up is that people will be paying for and absorbing only the facts they want to hear. The argument we are making is one of hygiene, basic hygiene in the media, in the mainstream media. I don't want to blow it up. I don't want an end to it or anything like it. I spent a significant amount of my life in the mainstream media. We just want it to be honest. We just want it to be factual. We don't want it to chase its own prejudices. We just want it to speak truth, whatever that is. That's not so radical.
Way to go, Douglas. That's it for me. Subscribe, like, and comment. We'll see you on the next one.